by William Law, the editor at the Arab Digest website. William, thank you very much for your time. Now, David Cameron told the British Parliament that Israel, as the occupying power in Gaza, has legal responsibility and must be held to account. We've been here before. Will they be held to account?
Yeah, we have been here before, and what we're seeing is a stepping up, if you will, of the pressure on the Israelis. The fact of the matter is, though, there's a certain amount of virtue signaling in all of this, as your reporters are showing the horrific situation in Gaza continues, and the West Bank. The building of new settler homes, the attacks on Palestinians continue. The whole situation calls for a very strong and firm rebuttal from the UK government. I'm afraid we're not hearing that nearly as strongly as you need to. In fact, Kamala Harris came out, I think, much more strongly than Lord Cameron has in her statements to Benny Gans. And I think that many here in the UK are looking for a much stronger leadership, not just from the government, but indeed from the opposition. The Labour opposition has finally started to move closer towards pushing the Sunak government, but not hard enough. And I think that when people here in Britain see the sorts of images that you were showing just before I came on, the shock and dismay continues to grow, and the pressure. Now, whether that will translate into some stronger stand from the UK government, I'm not holding my breath. This is a government who is still pushing through Parliament a bill that would limit local councils from choosing to invoke a BDS on Israel. This is a government that stood silent for weeks and weeks and weeks as the body count mounted in Gaza. This is a government that has shown a very strong support for Israel. This is a government that has, in the past, had ministers and indeed a deputy chair calling London, the city that I'm talking to you from, that had fallen into control of Islamists simply because our mayor is a Muslim. So, as I say to you, I'm not holding my breath. I would hope that the British government is listening to, I believe, the majority, and a large majority of people here in this country who want us to speak out much more strongly.
You mentioned the increasing pressure from the UK. You also mentioned there the increasing pressure from the US and Kamala Harris's very strong words in the last couple of days. But no amount of pressure, as you rightly say, appears to be having any impact on Benjamin Netanyahu. When do you think the US, for example, will start taking action? Will it be any time soon, for example, restricting military supplies or funding for UNRWA being reinstated by countries?
Well, I do not expect that the Biden administration will limit the sale of weapons. They could do it. They should do it. Really, your question is there a red line for Joe Biden on his support for Israel? I'm looking, and I'm really not seeing that red line. And Netanyahu knows that he can go very far, just as far as he'd like to, because Biden will continue in his extremely strong support for Israel. You know, the UNRWA situation is an example of how easily Western governments have been stampeded into simply accepting Israeli versions of events. And we saw the suspension of aid, UNRWA, by numerous governments. Now, thankfully, we're seeing that changing. Just today, the Canadian government, for example, announced it was renewing its support for UNRWA, and other governments here in Europe. I want to hear our government say the same thing. So hopefully, but you know, as again, your reporter very movingly spoke of the situation in Gaza where people are dying of hunger, of disease. and the bombing. And we mustn't forget that the bombings are going on remorselessly and relentlessly. So people seem to think that, well, there are conversations going on in Cairo, so somehow there must be a pause, a cessation. There is no cessation. The Israelis are actually stepping up their campaign, I believe, just ahead of Ramadan.
Do you think, William, that anything will come of Benny Gant's visit to the US and here in the UK and those talks that have been taking place?
Well, of course, Benny Gantz is a rival of Mr. Netanyahu's, and he may well be looking for political opportunities in these visits. The visit to the United States, to Washington, was not sanctioned by Mr. Netanyahu. I think it came as a bit of a shock to him. That may not be the case with the visit here in London today. Mr. Gantz, will he be able to put perhaps a little more pressure on Netanyahu, and what will that pressure translate into? You know, I think Netanyahu is in a trap. He is really caught by these extremist ministers, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, who are driving forward their crusade, their messianic crusade for what they see as the greater Israeli state. And they want to drive Palestinians out of Gaza, out of the West Bank, and quite frankly, the longer this goes on, the more they see their, I think, extreme and terrible vision coming closer to reality. So time is urgent. We are only a few days from Ramadan, but we're seeing again a stepping up of the Israeli attacks in Bethlehem, as again your reporter noted. You know, the situation is extremely dire, extremely dangerous. I don't see yet any sign that what Mr. Gantz is doing is going to change that picture.
William, thank you very much for talking to us. William Law, the editor of the Arab Digest website, speaking to us live from here in London.